John Lyons, welcome to 7:30. There's no further information on who was responsible for the bomb at the hospital in Gaza. But what's been the impact of that event, even if we don't know who was responsible?
Well, Sarah, certainly there's dispute about who fired it, but the fact that over the last week and a half Israel has fired, by their own admission, 6,000 bombs, dropped 6,000 bombs onto Gaza, has certainly made people in the Arab world believe that it was them. For example, King Abdullah of Jordan has said that Israel has committed a heinous war crime that cannot be ignored and that Israel must end its brutal aggression on Gaza. There's a lot of anger in the Arab world, so whether it was the IDF or not, it has certainly ignited this region.
Now, we know that Joe Biden is arriving in Israel this evening. He's coming at an extremely volatile moment. Why is he coming himself?
Sarah, I think he's coming to try to work out a final arrangement with the Israelis. I think what the delay is on their ground war, and they're planning to, there's been hundreds of soldiers here at this staging point where I am now, and they're planning to go into Gaza, which is just across there. And I think the reason for the delay has been United States concern about the possibility of massive civilian casualties. US Secretary of State Blinken has been here twice, and I think when President Biden arrives here in a few hours, it's all about trying to ensure that there is an opening through the Rafah crossing into Egypt to allow the humanitarian corridor. I think the Americans are increasingly nervous that this could become even more of a humanitarian catastrophe if those 2.3 million people in Gaza are locked into Gaza, which geographically is half the size of Canberra.
Now, I thought that Biden's visit, listening to what Secretary Blinken was saying, I thought Biden's visit depended on there being an opening of that crossing into Egypt, humanitarian corridor. Do we know why that seems not to have taken place?
The Egyptians are saying it's because the Israelis won't give a commitment not to bomb the Rafah crossing. The Israelis are disputing that. So yet again, like most things in this part of the world, nothing is accepted as common ground. But what we do know, the fact is that a week and a half into this war, there is no opening. You cannot get out of Gaza. So for all of the Australians, the dual nationals, the sick people, there's nowhere to go, there's nowhere to hide in Gaza because it is so small. So what we do know for sure is that Joe Biden wants to say to the Israelis there has to be some sort of safety valve. As Antony Blinken said, the way that Israel does this operation is important. He has said that Israel not only has a right but an obligation to respond to Hamas's attack here a week and a half ago, but it looks like the Americans still haven't been able to achieve the opening of that crossing into Egypt.
And as well, up for discussion, of course, is what happens to Gaza after any possible invasion of Gaza. Is that also crucial in these talks now, or is that something to be put off till later?
I think it's crucial. Joe Biden has already said that he doesn't think Israel should occupy and stay in the Gaza Strip. General Petraeus, of course, a former senior military figure in the US and head of the CIA, poses the question that if Israel gets into Gaza City, what now? He warns, General Petraeus, that it can't be like Baghdad, where the Americans go in, essentially remove a regime and leave a vacuum, which of course led to 20 years of bloodshed and violence. So the question I think President Biden will be wanting to say to the Israelis is, what do you want to do? What is your game plan? The Israelis will say it's to decapitate the head, as they say, the head of the snake of Hamas.
Now, at the same time, Biden's arrival has been thrown off course, obviously, by the reaction to the bombing at the hospital, and it led to the cancellation of the summit. Why do you think he's still coming? There must have been consideration for him to stay in Washington.
I think he's coming because the Americans realise that the Middle East is now a tinderbox. There are now two major aircraft carrier groups stationed just over here off the Mediterranean. They've brought that firepower in because they're worried that Iran will respond, Hezbollah on the north with Israel will respond. So I think the Americans are very concerned that this could lead to a wider war in the Middle East. So I think President Biden's trying to calm those waters. But as you said, within an hour of that explosion at the hospital in Gaza, Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, cancelled, said, I won't meet the US president. I think he now may be meeting him, but it just shows you how fraught. This is probably one of the most difficult missions that any US president has ever tried to engage in.
I just want to ask you a question about Iran. The Iranian foreign minister has said that time is running out. You mentioned the threat from Hezbollah, from Iranian-backed Hezbollah. How big is the risk of Israel having to face a second front?
It's a big risk. I think what we need to watch is if there is a ground invasion by Israel, if they do go into Gaza just over the back here, then I think to the north, straight ahead of me, we need to watch Hezbollah. Hezbollah may use that as a trigger. They have about 100,000 missiles hidden south of the Litani River in southern Lebanon. We need to watch, are they going to activate those? That, of course, will all depend on the message from Iran. If Tehran triggers them to do that, they will shoot those missiles. Israel will be fighting on its northern front, its southern front, and the West Bank is starting to become much more volatile and violent. So Israel's got these three possible fronts it's trying to juggle at the same time.
John, thank you. We'll see what happens during Biden's visit. But in the meantime, thanks for talking to us.
Thanks, Sarah.